This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
We all know most executive level positions are not posted or advertised. So the big question is this: if those 100K plus jobs are not posted or advertised, how do you go about your job search in a way so you can find the right companies, connect with the right people, and land your next ideal opportunity as quickly as possible and without compromise? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Chris Kirkpatrick, and welcome to Executive Job Search Secrets.
Hey, it's Chris Kirkpatrick, and welcome to the Executive Job Search Secrets podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about the 5 reasons why your executive resume is not working with your job search, or maybe just in general, you're not having success with your job search. And what I find is if you are somebody who is looking for a job at the 6-figure income level and up, or even, in fact, any level, probably, this is going to be completely relevant for you. And if you're somebody who is really leveraging your resume and you think that the way to find what you're looking for, or maybe the strategy you're implementing, is simply to get your resume, submit it to recruiters, submit it to job boards, and just kind of hope that strategy works and look for positions, then I would really encourage you to take notes during this, because it's going to be completely relevant to your search. So let's get into this thing. So reason number 1 that I find is that your resume lacks targeting. Most people do not take enough time at the beginning of their search to think about what are their ideal companies. Think about it this way: if you don't know who you'd be the best fit for in a company, and you can't create a targeted message to those types of organizations, how do you expect to differentiate yourself in the marketplace? You know, that is the biggest thing I can tell you. When you are entering the market as an executive, it is a really competitive environment, right? You need to make sure you differentiate yourself in the marketplace, and to do that, you need to make sure that the content is compelling and that it's written for specific opportunities. Think about it this way: how can you write the content for your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your bio, any of that stuff, if you don't understand the companies that you're trying to reach, the impact that you want to make with them? It's really important that you really start with the end in mind, and you start by understanding which types of organizations, employers, and so on that you are interested in working with. If you need, go out there, do some research. There are all sorts of ways. I know this is an area a lot of people have a hard time with, but it's important. Go out there, do the research, identify companies. Don't just go look at job boards, but think about companies. If a company did have an opportunity, would you be interested in working with them? Don't look for job boards and job postings, but just think about it in terms of, if they did have an opportunity available, would you be excited to work with that organization? And make a list of those companies and write your resume to that candidate. I hope that makes sense. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that your resume doesn't generate enough chemistry or differentiate you from your competitors. Remember, when recruiters and decision makers are going through resumes, they're probably looking at dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes, and you need to make sure that your resume is formatted in a way that it pops, it stands out. You need to make sure that your marketing documentation is done in such a way that it interrupts the pattern of them just kind of briefly looking at the resume and discarding it, throwing it in the recycle bin, putting it in the stack of no's, what have you. Remember, a lot of people think that the resume is a way to find a job, but really resumes are more used to filter out the people who are not the right candidate than to find the people who are the right candidate. And so when you think about it from those terms, the mindset that recruiters and decision makers are in when they're looking through a stack of resumes is not, hey, I'm going to spend all this time going through this stack and really giving a lot of time and energy to each resume. It's, I'm going to go through and I'm going to try to find the first opportunity I can to discard this and to eliminate it from the process. And that is where you need to make sure that the content, the format, that you have it designed, and you're using verbiage and language in such a way that speaks to them, that makes you jump off the page, and that helps you interrupt the pattern of them throwing resumes into a no pile. So the third reason that I find people's resumes are not working is because they're simply spending all the wrong time in all the wrong places. And think about it this way. If you're spending 80% of your time focused on job boards and company websites and submitting to recruiters and job postings, did you know that roughly only about 10 to 20% of the jobs at the executive level are ever going to be posted or advertised? So what does that mean? That means if you're spending 80% of your time on websites and job boards and submitting your information to recruiters in that capacity, that means you're spending 80% of your time where only 10 to 20% of the opportunity exists. And so think about it this way. In what business would you spend 80% of your time where only 20% of the revenue comes from? You wouldn't at all. In fact, that is most certainly a recipe for disaster. And so I would encourage you to think about it from a different perspective. And if that is your process, rethink the process. Think about the different tools that you can use. I've got a lot of different podcast episodes that I talk about different strategies you can use. I don't have time and don't want to make this a really long episode talking about those strategies, but certainly make sure that if you are spending 80% of your time on job boards, on company websites, trying to connect with recruiters, it is something that you want to rethink and re-implement a new strategy. So the fourth reason that I find that your resume isn't working for you is that it's simply getting lost in the applicant tracking system. It's not something you're going to run across a lot as an executive, but if you're somebody who's under the 100K level listening to this and you're looking to aspire to the 100K and up level, I would say that making sure that you use all the right keywords and that your resume is formatted in such a way that you are submitting it and customizing it to the right job postings, because let's face it, some executive level positions, especially when you get into the lower level executive, the six-figure and up director level type positions, there are a fair amount of jobs that are posted, especially with the larger organizations, and so it can be an issue. So while I always kind of say don't rely on the ATS and don't rely on job boards, it would be I think dangerous of me to suggest to anybody that there is zero opportunity there, because there absolutely is. So I did want to address that. So I would say number 4 is your resume is getting lost in the ATS system, and that's happening because you're not customizing it properly, you're not using the right words, and your resume is not being submitted in specific enough context for what the posting is looking for, and so it's just getting lost. So the 5th reason that I find that people's resume is not working for them is that, in fact, their resume is fine. Their problem isn't their resume at all. Their problem is that their online presence is killing them. You go online, if somebody thinks you're a good candidate, the first thing that they're going to do is Google you, right? So I'm not sure if you've Googled yourself yet and taken the time to see what your online presence is. Maybe you need some reputation management. There are a lot of people that kind of fall into that category. Maybe you have some Facebook posts that are hurting you. Maybe your LinkedIn profile just isn't up to par, isn't professional enough, and it really isn't really highlighting your brand, your value, what you can do for an organization such as theirs. The bottom line is you need to make sure that your online presence all the way around, from social media to Google to anything that's out there posted on the web about you, and that it is singing kind of a positive song for you. And if it's not, you need to make sure that you do what we call reputation management, and you figure out how to manage that. And so how you got to figure out what strategies you can use to make sure that if somebody does do a search on you, that they are finding only the things ultimately that you want them to find first, and it's really that straightforward. So those are the 5 areas that I would say people struggle with the most. Just to kind of recap, Reason number one, your resume lacks targeting, right? So you're not being intentional enough about the companies that you're looking to go after. Reason number two, you are not differentiating yourself enough from your competition in the marketplace. Remember, it's all about being different. If you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, you need to be different, and you need to position yourself as different, because if you act like everybody else, you're going to get treated like everybody else. Number three, you're spending your time in the wrong place. 80% of your time cannot be spent on where 20% of the efforts come from. I don't care what you're talking about, business or your job search, it's all the same thing. Number four, your resume is getting lost in the ATS. Once again, I don't think that's a common issue for executives, but it does happen at the lower six-figure income earners. And number five, make sure your online presence is up to par for where you need it to be for the level of organization that you're going for, because rest assured, in today's day and age, you will be Googled. They will look over your LinkedIn profile. They will look over your Facebook and Instagram and any of the other things that you have. Or obviously not everybody is on every platform, but those are things that are to be conscious and aware of, and to get ahead of the game on for your job search. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some insight and maybe gives you some ideas on ways that you can improve your process and your search. And until next time, I hope you go out there, have a blessed, inspirational day. I'll see you on the next podcast. Are you tired of struggling with your job search? Are you having a hard time connecting with key decision makers, or struggling with knowing how to communicate your brand more effectively? Or maybe there's something else holding you back. Either way, our team is here to help and would love to give you a free 30-minute consult to hear about what you're doing, what you're looking for, and give you some advice on how to get there more effectively. All you have to do is go to www.careernextagency.com, and we'll talk to you soon.
Like what you just heard? Visit c-suiteradio.com. C-Suite Radio, turning the volume up on business.